All right, hello everybody. I guess I'll stand up here. I want to feel special a little bit. So, and I have one glove on because, come on, it's cold, guys. I got to have one hand that works. Yeah. So, first question is, we want this to be kind of a quick one for this to kind of warm up. So, and this is for everybody here. So, what is one daily practice that has had an extraordinary impact on your life? So we'll start with you, Del. So one practice that has had an extraordinary impact.
I am a firm believer in meditation. I think that we live in a busy world. We watch the TV. We're always thinking, always saying, always trying to fix something. But if you want to truly let God speak, I think you've got to get out of the way. So you've got to learn to shut your mind down and be able to just close it out so that there's a space for that truth to enter. And I find meditation to be the best way to do that.
For me, before I get out of bed in the morning, when I wake up, I spend 10 or 15 minutes just in prayer and thought and thinking about people I care about and family and the business and our customers and our world and our politicians and even the ones I don't like. And just lift them up to the Lord, and then going about my devotional and then chore time. But a centering time like that, I think, is really a powerful thing.
All right. So we got meditation, we got gratitude practice.
I echo all of those as well. Yes, and prayer, definitely. One thing that really did change my health and my outlook and things in recent years has been getting the morning sun, getting out within 30 to 45 minutes of sunrise. Is a thought that my friend Thaddeus Owen gave me. And when I started getting that morning sun, it set my circadian rhythm. It had my metabolism going strong. It revved my mitochondria, like all the things. Plus, it just feels good. I've seen more sunrises in the past few years than I had in my whole lifetime previous. It's crazy. But I'm so grateful because it really helps set me in line with nature more and just help me live my most vibrant life. So I love it.
So my important daily practice is to eat a really good breakfast. I actually can't make it through the day without my good breakfast, and that breakfast always includes a lot of butter, very often our good bacon, eggs, really good high-fat, high-cholesterol breakfast. I can't recommend it enough.
And I can vouch for Hilda. If you ever travel with Hilda, she is up with the sunrise without an alarm, and she's doing her movement practice in the sun, which is really cool. Joel, you got a ton of questions. Quite a few were things very particular to the farm. So I thought maybe people could harass you afterwards about that. A really good one, though. I am clueless who wrote this one. How much can you deadlift? So, there might have been the raw milk guys. No idea. No idea, he says. No idea.
I've just, I've never had a fitness program because I'm always working. And that's actually been a little problem as I've aged and done more speaking and writing and traveling, and to not have a fitness program. It's been taking a little bit of adjustment to try to compensate, but it seems like whenever I try to compensate in a hotel room, I end up pulling something. So now whenever I travel, that's just my downtime, and I just rest and I sleep 10 hours and enjoy it.
Yeah. That's a great one. Joel, we're going to stick with you because I didn't expect you to actually answer that one. So earlier today, you mentioned organic matter in the soil. So what exactly makes up that organic matter you speak of?
There are two kinds of organic matter. They're kind of, if there's an agronomist in the group, sorry, I'm just a layman, but there are basically two kinds. There's legacy organic matter, and then there's living organic matter. Legacy is like the old black in Iowa soils. It's old legacy material, and then you have the active biological component that is earthworms, actinomycetes, fungal, hyphae, mycelia, all those kinds of things, and so. Just because, like those really black Iowa soils, just because they're black does not mean they're actually real fertile right now. It does mean that fertility can be achieved faster than here, where both legacy and living were gone when we came. So, North Dakota, South Dakota, the farther north you go, the easier it is to hold on to organic matter because the decomposition is slower and you have winter. That's why the soils in the south depleted much faster, because you have decomposition year round, and so it's easier for the organic matter to eat out. But basically the two components. So you can't just. This is a good kind of a spiritual metaphor. You can't just rest on yesteryear's accomplishments. There has to be ongoing nurturing of that organic matter, both the legacy and the current living.
And then a follow-up question we had that would go well with this. If you have a monocropped land, how long does it often take to fully replenish that into regenerative soil?
Everything for the camera. Right?
Yeah. For some reason, the big pile of manure wasn't making the shot.
Mr. Director, that's compost. That's compost. Okay. So how long does it take? Well, a lot of that is from where you start. So that's why the recipe and the time frame for fertility development differs depending on where you are and where you're starting from. Let's take it this way. If we're going to run a foot race, one person's got 2 broken legs, one person's got 2 broken arms, and one person just hasn't been practicing. The person that hasn't been practicing is going to be able to get in shape quicker for the race than the guy with the 2 broken legs. Are you with me? So the preparedness regimen is going to be a little, unless you're Dell's mother, then you just have to get out there and run anyway, right? But
It'll work, trust me.
That's like homeopathy on steroids, like heals like. But anyway, that's why different people, depending on where you are in the world, even in a locale, have a different recipe and have a few different experiences depending on where you're starting that race. We call it the fertility race, where you start. So, for example, when you get into Ohio and Indiana, basically west of West Virginia, that area was conquistadored 100 years fewer than us here, than we were here in Virginia. So right now, if you buy farmland in Virginia, it's going to be a lot longer horizon, fertility horizon achievement than if you buy land in, say, northern Indiana or South Dakota or even Wyoming, and or Missouri or Arkansas. Okay, because that got I call it conquistadored later. Okay, and so that's why you have different books and different experiences that people have in different time frames. In general, you can see, no matter where you are, you can see really, really big changes at 3 years. We found when we rent about 15 properties in the area, and they're all terribly abused and all that. And it's about 3 years till you really start seeing the biology start to kick in. And of course, everything that you can add to it, multi-species, compost, whatever else you can do to encourage it, it speeds it up as well.
It's a lot faster than I thought. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot faster than you.
Yeah, that was much faster. Yeah, please.
I just want to, I guess this is a question for Joel, because you talked about in the forest, there's really, my observation is not topsoil in the forest. It's something else, more like peat. And I say this because we have converted forest to pasture land, and the topsoil is very different from what's in the forest. Do you want to comment on that?
Well, generally, the forest soil generally will be higher in organic matter, and so it's softer. And because it's fungal, the pasture bacteria needs time to come in. And forest soils tend to be fungal. Pasture soils tend to be bacterial. The best soils are both bacterial and fungal, which is why silvopasture has so much merit to it, because you get both fungal and or wood chip oriented compost brings fungal into the bacterial pasture. And so I think the difference is primarily a fungal bacterial thing rather than strictly organic matter per se.
Yeah. Sally, that was maybe the best question we had out of anybody's. That was great. So Sally, we'll go to you next. What should we do in light of possible upcoming food shortages?
Well, you can take the pledge, and the pledge is to spend at least half of your food dollars buying directly from local farmers and artisans. The other half, if you want to celebrate how small the world has become and enjoy rice and pineapples, that's fine too. But we really need to support our local farms. There was a recent study in Tennessee where they found if the populace spent just 5% of their food dollar locally, the increase in wealth in the state was just tremendous. So how do you do this? And you just say you've heard about the pledge, you want to take the pledge, but where are you going to find these farms? Well, we have two great resources at the Weston A. Price Foundation. One is our local chapters. Do we have any local chapters here? Would they like to stand up? Okay, so yeah, local chapters, stand up, please. We have quite a few here. They're also listed in the back of our journal and on our website. You can go to our website and look up your state and find the local chapters there. And the local chapter, they have promised every year they do a food resource list, and they make a list of the farms like Joel's, the farms doing raw milk, the local sourdough bread makers, the local sauerkraut makers, okay? And they keep that list and they will provide it to you. So that's one way of getting started. The other way is to go to our website, realmilk.com, which we've just updated. Our traffic to this website has doubled in the last year, and it's helping people find the real milk farmers, the raw milk farmers, but you can also find, most of these farmers are also doing beef and chicken and everything else. So those are the two ways. By our chapter system, we have over 400 chapters worldwide, not just in the United States, but in other countries. And if you don't have a chapter in your area, maybe you'd like to start one, okay? And the other is realmilk.com.
Does anybody else want to answer that as well?
I can't stand to not add no arguments with Sally. She's dead on. I don't know anybody on the planet that's done more to connect farms with plates than Weston A. Price and Sally Fallon. So, absolutely. So I would just ask a question. Ask yourself, would we have come through the COVID mess in 2020? In 2020, we sold 6 months worth of inventory in about 3 weeks. We've never seen anything like it. We were wiped out in no time. Yeah, you were too. And now it's kind of gone back to an equilibrium, or even maybe a little bit backwards. But anyway, ask yourself if instead of having 150 500-person processing plants, canneries, abattoirs, food processing facilities, in the United States, instead of having 150, 500 employee mega centralized processing facilities for all the different food items. What if instead we had had 50,000 community-oriented, 20 employee neighborhood processing facilities? You just ask yourself that question and then say, would we have come through better? And I don't think you have to think very long to have an answer.
Thank you. So, yeah, you guys can stop me with clapping anytime you want, please. Like, it's all worthy. We're gonna switch this up some, kind of a more fun question. It's fun for me because this is really exciting for me. What is your most memorable podcast guest? Wait, I want to say that wasn't sitting on the stage. Yeah. And then afterwards, you can let them duke it out to say which of these three as well.
I think right now we've had over 365 guests on the show of published interviews. And there's some that didn't even get out there because either the audio quality wasn't great or we just weren't sure it should get out there. So I've interviewed so many people. And yes, everyone on this stage has given stellar information, advice, and wisdom, which I'm thankful for. But really, this is going to sound like a cop-out, but it's not. The most recent podcast I did with Dr. Cassie Huckabee made a huge impact on me. If you haven't listened to that one, you should. We called it Your Life is Your Medicine because this is Cassie's motto. And her point is, however you're living right now is impacting your life in profound ways. So she said, it's your medicine for good or for bad. So we really need to pay attention to how we're living. She said, if your life was in a lineup, would you pay for it? Would you buy it off the shelf or would you rather have someone else's? This is food for thought. And I think we really need to consider, am I living my best life? And if not, what needs to change? Because how we're living makes a difference in our today and our tomorrow. I thought that was really powerful and I'm thankful for that.
Yeah, and then which of these three? Which
what?
Of these three?
Oh,
That's not fair. No, that's not fair.
That's not fair. Sally says that's not fair and she's right.
I'll give you that. That's okay. Del, let's jump to you. So, how did we get in? This is so loaded, right? How did we get in this mess? Like mandates, Great Reset, all this stuff.
I mean, I have 265 episodes that are trying to scratch the surface of that answer. We are in this mess the same way we have been throughout time, whether it's the Roman Empire or anything else. You have the same powers of greed, desire for control, desire to be God. Greed, money finds a way. And I think this has been a process. I think you can look back to Nazi Germany and see that we didn't give up on that perspective. They just slowed it down a little bit. I think there was a lot of, we need to own the televisions this time. We really need to have the media. And so they really were setting up for this transition to a globalist power. I mean, you have to just recognize people are fearful. We all are. Imagine if just honestly, one of the things I think we do is we put a lot of blame on politicians, and you just really try to imagine for a day you are president of the United States. I mean, really, even just for a moment, imagine that the lives of 330 million Americans is in your hands, and that there's a Vladimir Putin and all these things. Now whether that's running all those things, but can you imagine how terrifying that responsibility is for any human on this planet? And then imagine one of the first desires you would have would be to control that environment so it doesn't get out of hand, right? To protect them, to protect you. Nature is to want to control. So I assure you, every large nation has been talking about eugenics forever. It is a common conversation, and you would be having it too. How do we feed everybody? How do we have energy for everybody? If there's too many people, are we getting that close? Do we set in measures to control population. We've got to stop seeing these things as sort of like satanic developments. It's the natural conversation. We have people that are out of balance with how they're trying to deal with it. But I think if we at least see that job and understand humanity and what's thinking, well, it's like sort of know your enemy. We have to really know where this all starts and where it begins. And it starts with our own fear, control of our own household, of our own children, you know. My sister was visiting the other day, and my son, you know, in my house, you know, I want my kids to be dynamic individuals. I do not believe, you know, seen but not heard, and that whole idea is not what's going down in my house. I want leaders. I want people that are going out and going to make a difference in the world. So my kids know, and I've said to them, if you come up with a winning argument against whatever I've said, then you get your way. And trust me, it was how I was raised. Question authority, right? It makes parenting really difficult. And so I was having a moment with my son where he's like, well, what about this, Dad? And what about this? And my sister was visiting. She's trying to just like, will you just do what your father said? I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. This isn't your conversation. It's mine. He is making his argument. It's not a very good one, but I'm going to let him finish it. But that's it, right? We all desire control. It's an easier world if my kids just shut up and do what I say. It's an easier nation if the people just shut up and do what we say. And we have allowed them to believe that we're on their leash, and we've forgotten that the United States of America puts us in charge of the leash and they're on our leash. We've got to get back to that reality. It's just nature.
Thank you for that. Thank you. And then another one for you, Del. You know, we kind of live in our own echo chamber here, right? We all are very like-minded people. It's hard to see, is this community growing? Your community in particular, since you first made Vaxxed to now your show, have you seen growth in this community, and what can we see? What signs do you have of that?
Well, I have analytics. I get to look at what's happening online. I've gotten to watch a show that I started, I think just over, was it 4 years now? Something like that. And we've gone from hundreds of viewers to thousands of viewers. Then right before, I'll tell you, coronavirus was fantastic. It's fantastic for growing this movement, whether it's food and farming or, you know, natural health, freedom. All of that is exploding because of the oppression that's been brought upon us. We went from, I would say, 100 to 200,000 views per episode to now, as I've said many times, over 6 million views every week and growing. That's just in 2 years. I think when you look at this conversation, it is clear that COVID vaccine backfired. This entire pandemic is a backfire. Everything they hoped to achieve, the opposite has happened. They made us grow, and there's real signs of that. I think the most obvious sign is, first of all, we were supposed to have a vaccine passport by the end of this. We do not. America stood strong, and we're leading the world. We were supposed to all get vaccinated, and we did not. I think they're conceding that 25% of this nation didn't get a single vaccine. I think it's higher than that. I think that they're exaggerating. I would say probably 35% of this nation didn't touch the vaccine. And then I think, you know, less, you know, right around, you know, 50 or so, 60, somewhere in there, might have gotten one of the vaccines. But when you look at the CDC numbers now, we are now at a point where under a third of the nation that's, you know, is viable to get the booster is not getting, has gotten the booster. 2/3 of this nation is now rejecting the CDC recommendation. Go on an airplane right now and watch how many people are wearing masks when the CDC is recommending it. They have walked away from the power of the CDC. That is growth like they never dreamed, and we never dreamed. And I think lastly, the Iowa poll just 2 months ago polled, you know, suspected voters on whether they believed that the childhood vaccine program should be mandated. Remember, that is mandated for the entire country, and 34% of those polled in Iowa believe that that should be a mandated product, down from 59% before the pandemic. Those are growth numbers that exceed any dream I've ever had, any dream Robert Kennedy Jr. has ever had. We're absolutely moving in the right direction. They're moving in the wrong direction, which means their pushback and their terror and their fear is going to be massive. We have to brace for it and realize what's coming our way. But we're winning, and I really believe God's with us. We will win this, but it's going to get really gnarly. All right.
I think gnarly is a great word to describe that. Hilda, I mean, you're like the queen of these things. I don't know. So we already asked a similar question, but I feel like this needs to be asked of you because you do a lot of things. You build habits really well. And we had a lot of questions for you of what is one thing to do to improve your health? Just one. So you are you don't like the cold, but you cold plunge. You love the sun. Who doesn't? I mean, you have all these things. That was your whole talk today. So what is one thing to improve your health?
I think a lot of us, if not every single one of us on this panel, have said something along these lines, but I do think our health has to do more with our spirits than we may have ever realized. Are you okay back there? Okay, just checking. Something fell. I hope it wasn't a person. Okay, just a table. Or a beam. Yeah, or a beam. No, it wasn't a beam. Okay, we're okay. I do think everywhere I've been in the world, and obviously probably since time immemorial, we are more than flesh and bone. We're spirit too. And so I think it's really important to cultivate a spiritual practice, because if you just live in the flesh and you're unhappy or looking at all the negative stuff, then your health isn't going to be good. It can't be good if your spirit is down. And I've seen people on their sick bed. Actually, one of my best friends is extremely sick. She has chronic fatigue. She has heavy metal toxicity. She's sensitive to EMFs, everything. And yet the other day when I said to her, Lisa, what do you foresee for the future? Like, I want you to have a happy future. She said something along these lines, I'm happy today. And I was like, yes, that just filled my soul. So going back to a spiritual practice, I think is really important. If you don't know where to start, yes, try beginning with gratitude. I have a small little gratitude journal. I write things I'm thankful for every day. I definitely pray. I believe what the Bible says. God says, seek and you will find. And if you seek me with your whole heart, you will find me. So seek God and know that there is a bigger picture at play. Dell alluded to it. We all know it in our heart of hearts. And I say develop that practice. And even again, a simple way to start might be with just a gratitude journal.
Amen. Great. Thank you. Sally, we had a couple questions about people that had food allergies and, things so nourishing like cheese and eggs and what to do about that. But one in particular, and I know none of us are doctors up here, right? One in particular, somebody was asking about a child born without a thyroid. What would be some really great foods to help nourish that child?
Oh my goodness, I wouldn't. Almost can't presume. I have. First of all, I've never heard of such a thing. You might have a poorly functioning thyroid. So can I answer that question?
I might have read the question wrong.
Yeah.
If I'm thinking.
Nope, none. He has none, she says.
None. So no thyroid.
Well, a child will have to take some kind of thyroid, whether it's synthetic or animal-based or whatever. The thyroid receptors in the cells require butyric acid, and that's in butter. So lots of butter. It's my answer to everything, actually. Or ghee. It could be ghee also. So, yeah, that's a really difficult one. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I thought it would be, but
But whatever, you're going to have to take some kind of thyroid hormone. You want to make sure that the cells are using that hormone. So that's where the butter comes in.
Yeah. I mean, who doesn't want to hear the answer butter, right? Who doesn't want to hear that? Yeah.
So one of the biggest mistakes our government made was to push farmers into the Friesian cow, the Holstein cow, the black and white cow. They did that because it gives you higher production, but it's lower butter fat. And we actually have a shortage of butterfat in this country today. And the industry, I mean, this industry is so corrupt. They make more money on the butterfat if you buy ice cream than if you buy whole milk. There's not much money on the butterfat in whole milk. And I'm sure some kind of accountant has worked all this out. You know, how much do we make on the butterfat if we sell cookies and cream ice cream or vanilla ice cream or butter or whole milk? And so what has been the consequence of this is that the USDA has sanctioned no-fat milk for children in schools. And it's either no-fat milk, which they hate, or flavored milk, which is also no-fat, but has more sugar in it than sodas. And there are actually about 4 or 5 websites out there just to promote flavored milks for school children. It is a shame. I mean, we should be in sackcloth and ashes that we have allowed this to happen. This starvation of our growing children, it is a type of genocide, simply to allow the milk industry to make more money on the on the shortage of butterfat, because that's exactly what it is.
And you're not saying ice cream doesn't taste amazing. You're
Of course, you should make your own ice cream. The garbage in ice cream is horrendous. Use the recipe in Nourishing Traditions. It's just cream, egg yolks, maple syrup, and I think that's it. Yeah. There you go.
That sounds delicious. Yeah, please.
Okay. We just did a series on the Wise Traditions podcast on mental health, and we talked about this very thing too, how nutrition can make your children not only healthy but happy. And I just want to tell a quick story that I was at a park recently, and I was sitting on a bench and started talking to this teacher, and she's like, oh my gosh, the kids in my classroom are just out of control. They're not on their meds. You know, they're supposed to be taking ADHD meds, and some of them see a counselor and they're just not doing all the things. And I said, what grade do you teach? She said, 2nd grade. I was like, oh my goodness, what are we doing to our children? So you're so right, Sally. And I think a solid diet with a lot of those healthy animal fats will help them be not only healthy, but happy and mentally strong.
Yeah. And for those of you who just can't do dairy, coconut milk ice cream is incredible. You know, buy cans of coconut milk. I know, you know, we don't want the BPA and stuff, but there's some really great options out there to make really terrific, really healthy and healing ice cream from that. So we have one more question for you, Del, and then another for the whole group here. So what do you personally do to build your own resilience? And you take that direction you want, as you will.
Not enough, whatever it is. No, you know, I actually had a real health issue last year where I ended up finding out that my hemoglobin level is at 4.8, which is about to die. I had thought I was having COVID and all these other issues, and it ended up being hemorrhoids. Actually, if you've watched the show, that you've seen it, and it's not that sexy. But the truth is I was really part of that, just pushing myself so hard and not taking care of myself enough, you know, just really running it and burning it at all ends. And so now I am much more aware. I am focused on my diet, and I am focused on exercising and making sure I find that time so that I can be here to do the work that I'm doing. And so in general, it's time. You know, it doesn't matter whatever the supplement is, you're going to have to take time to fortify yourself and recognize, you know, when you're pushing it too hard. You know, I was accepting that I was, 30 pounds heavier than I am right now, and I'm back to being able to do pull-ups, which I had almost given up on ever doing again. More than one. Yeah, I think we're only got 2. Yeah, it's coming back, and I feel great. You know, I'm playing more sports, so but I would say you have to take the time to take care of yourself. And there's so many, I'm not going to say there's so many different diets, and you're seeing some of the greatest voices in that. That's not my space to speak, but whatever, just take the time to do it. Yeah.
All right, and I'll send this right back to you because this is a question for all four of you. What extraordinary, we're going back with the extraordinary, what extraordinary lessons from the past several years have you learned? I'm assuming this question is pertaining to COVID. Maybe it's not, but to me, what isn't pertaining to COVID these days? And to me, it's been a massive blessing in my life in so many ways. So let's hear what you guys have about that.
I think that's what my talk was. I think it's really simple. If I ever had any doubts, I think we've made incredible strides. We've won a massive battle that defies all odds, and that's simply because with God, all things are possible. So that's what I've learned.
I guess for us, the extraordinary thing has been just a new phraseology on a lot of things. Like, for example, it's kind of like the Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, when the COVID first hit, you have this denial, then you want to, leave, then you get angry, and then you blame, you get all this, that. And so a lot of us, I'm sure I'm not the only one here, gone through periods of just anger and frustration at society, at those people, and whatever, that person, the TSA agent or whatever. And so what has come out of it for me is just to put all my attention on taking that anger and frustration, and turning it around to proactive innovation and creativity, so that we build a community that knows how to grow things, build things, and fix things. And that includes fix, all right? But grow things, fix things, and build things that will positively offer help and hope as the culture moves into helplessness and hopelessness. And that's what we've all got to be about. So if I can take all that negative energy and that frustration and turn it into positive, building havens, bunkers, places of healing and retreat for hope and help, then I'll be most ready to, and the community that can build, repair, and grow will be the most ready to minister when people become hopeless and helpless.
Thank you. Yeah, so find some hobbies that actually make a difference. Find hobbies that can build resilience. So, yeah.
As soon as everything hit, I think it was in March 2020, I ran out to Sally's farm to interview her. I was like, what should we do with this COVID thing? And then I ran over here to Polyface to talk to Joel. And I think I found that what's extraordinary is in the ordinary. Sally's reassuring words about the importance of nutrient-dense food, and Joel's reassuring common sense advice about, well, I don't know if it's common sense to jump into the compost with the pigs, but the idea was our bodies are resilient. And I think just doing the basics of food and farming and faith, sticking to those things, will help us stay the course no matter how crazy this world gets. So I think I found that, yeah, the ordinary is extraordinary, and it's really the way to live and enjoy this life. It's not so much dependent on what's happening circumstantially. If we can stick to these things, we can do them when COVID comes and when COVID goes, and when something else comes and it goes. And it's like we're still doing our thing, right? So that's what really hits home for me is, yeah, food, farming, faith. What else begins with F? All the things I told you earlier.
Oh, Sally.
Oh, Sally, yes.
Okay, so you want to know about something extraordinary that happened to me?
Yeah. What was something you extraordinary
Okay, so
learned over the last few years?
Oh, well, can I go back to when I was 11?
Yeah. Please.
Okay. And this is a little story. It's just going to take me a minute to tell it. So, it was in like February, and I was 11 years old, and my grandmother had given us this really neat cloth kite for Christmas, and my father put it together. It had balsa wood and light cotton and everything, and then he made a wheel with the longest string you've ever seen. And we got this kite up in the air, way up in the air. Just a beautiful symbol, being connected with the heavens. And we were just sitting there talking, and my dad always encouraged me to do math, and I was in a kind of advanced math group. And he said, well, what are you studying in math right now? And I said, well, we're doing this chapter on probability and statistics. Well, he said, well, tell me about it. And I said, well, if you flip a coin, the odds that you'll get heads are 1 in 2. But if you flip that coin again, the odds that you'll get heads 2 times in a row are 1 in 4. If you flip it again, they're 1 in 8 and everything. He said, oh, well, let's try that. He said, you have got a coin in your pocket? And I didn't think I did, but I put my hand in my pocket and there was a nickel in there. So I flipped the nickel and it was heads. And I flipped the nickel again and it was heads. And again, it was heads. I flipped this nickel about 8 times. It was heads every time. And my father said, let me see that nickel. And we looked at the nickel, and it was a 2-headed nickel. And he said, look at this. And you could see where it had been soldered together. And this nickel appeared in my pocket when we had this beautiful symbol of the kite up in the heavens, and we were talking about probability and statistics. Now, what is the probability of finding a 2-headed nickel in your pocket under these circumstances? It's 0. It's 0. I took that nickel home and I put it in my jewelry box, and when I went to find it again, it was gone. It disappeared. And it took me a long time to kind of figure out what this was all about. But it was definitely a message from the heavens, and the heavens have a sense of humor, obviously, that we do not live in a clockwork universe. Things do not happen by probability and statistics. We receive messages. We influence what happens. We bring things to us by the way we think and the way we act. This is not a clockwork universe. And that was the message that came to me when I was 11 years old. It was wonderful.
Thank you. So at dinner last night, Joel hosted us and the farm, everybody on the farm you host for dinner all the time, which I think is awesome. That's like a daily thing for you guys. You told a story about a chicken that got picked up. Oh yeah. One of your chickens. Can you tell that story real fast? It's just so.
Yeah, this happened just a few days ago. I didn't see it, but the gal who runs our marketing and store saw it. We had the chicken, the eggmobile, right outside in the field across from the store, and a bald eagle came down and picked up a chicken. And then, all of a sudden, a whole group of crows, a murder of crows, arrived, and they attacked the bald eagle. And the eagle dropped the chicken. The chicken was fine, scurried away, and then the eagle went off. So the crow is a type of raven, or a raven is a type of crow. And the raven was a symbol of the first level of initiation before the time of Christ, when they had all these mystery schools. And that raven was a symbol of the developing a connection with the spiritual world, whatever you want to call it. So it's really good to have crows on your property, unless you've got baby chicks. They will go after baby chicks, but they won't go after chickens. And crows are wonderful birds. They will follow you. If you feed them every day, they'll bring you shiny things, trinkets and things. So it's good to have crows. So that's an animal, almost like a domesticated bird. It's really close to human beings.
So we should all try to be crows for our fellow chickens then. So we have just a couple more minutes. Do any of you have questions for any of you? Anything? Because if not, I'll just ask Joel about some of the farm questions that some people had. Yeah? So the pond. Someone was wondering on the farm, Are your ponds lined, or did you simply dig holes and let them fill?
Pond building is both a science and an art form. And if you build very many, you'll have some that work and some that don't. And we've done both, some that work and some that don't. And so the ones that work are really nice, and the ones that don't, you have to do some remediation. Probably the most dramatic remediation we've had, we had one that leaked. It wouldn't hold 8 inches of water. We hit a shale seam in the water, just flow out the bottom. And we put electric fence around the edge, put 20 pigs in there for 2 weeks with a ton of corn, and it's never leaked an ounce since. We call it squealer sealers. It's a new business, you know. You provide the corn, we provide the pigs, we'll seal your pond. We haven't been that successful on every single one of them. The thing is to pick a site that is in the stair step of a ravine. So, you know, the terrain, the topography is never straight lines. Okay, it's in arcs and circles. And so when you go up a ravine, the ravine is not a straight line. It goes in undulating steps like that. So what you want to do is you want to pick where that step is, because that's where the water has slowed down over centuries and deposited small particulate in that area, which is more impervious. So you want to pick that very carefully. And the other thing I would just say is the best thing you can do is find somebody, preferably over 60, that's built a lot of ponds in his lifetime in your area. Don't go down to the NRCS office, the government office, and get a grant and an engineer that's 20 years old and straight out of college and doesn't know anyway. Go get an old geezer that's spent his life on that excavator. He's been in all kinds of soil, terrain, different situations in your area. Ask him, could you show me 2 or 3 ponds that you've built? And he'll say, yeah, go over there, you know, Smith's Farm and blah, 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 and go see those ponds. And vet him that way and see if it's a pond that you like on your place. And you'll find we have used numerous excavators in the area, and there are some that are really good and some that are really bad. Some that are just, we call them they're just dirt movers. And there are others that, that's a little red there. That's especially good. This is a little yellow here. We'll save that over here to cap off this corner. And I mean, they're just separating this out. And I mean, it's poetry. So all of these things are both science and art. And we need to appreciate that skill.
And then one last question. This is probably the last one we have in us today. There was a question about, you spoke earlier on, I'm trying to think, I don't have the card on me right now. It was about the pigs, and I missed your talk, so it must have been an accident. The pigs helped to reseed an area that you were talking about earlier. The old seeds. Yeah. So people wanted to know. Yeah, they wanted to know what seed that actually was. Is that what it was?
Okay, so. All right, so 500 years ago, the Native Americans created. Well, Sally has talked about the alpha soils here in the valley, but this was not a wilderness. We were talking about it yesterday. There were 500 years ago, more people lived in Kansas and Nebraska than live there today. Not New York City, okay, but Kansas and Nebraska. So in fact, 500 years ago, North America was more abundant. It produced more food than it does today. And so the Native Americans didn't like opaquely wooded places. The dense woods of the last of the Mohegans, that was a European thing. The woods that the Europeans found when they came here were widely spaced. They were permaculture type. With wide spaces. The Native Americans didn't like opaque woods because other tribes could sneak up on them and kill them, right? And so they maintained these with fire. That would kill the diseased trees and the weak trees and leave the good ones, and made pasture. So there were bison here, elk, deer, prairie chickens, pheasants, turkeys, passenger pigeons, flocks big enough to blot out the sun for 3 days, Audubon said. Big flocks before Tyson. And 200 million beavers. And so this landscape was a very exercised landscape. Well, here we came along, the Europeans, and we quit exercising. Well, first we raped it and pillaged it and destroyed it. And then as the gullies and the erosion and the rocks came, then we abandoned it. And in 1900, right now our county has twice as many trees in it as it did in 1850. Okay, so there have been 3 deforestations here, and so back in 1860, all these wooded forests here behind us up that mountain were all barley and wheat fields, and before then they were these silvopastures that the Native Americans maintained with fire. And so as we've gone into these now, and with the pigs, not fire, with the chainsaw as our partner and the pigs as our helper, we've recreated these silvopastures up there, and the pigs have disturbed that like a fire would disturb it, and created a different sunlight, ecosystem there, microsystem, and suddenly we're getting these old species of grasses that even the NRCS agent says, I've never seen anything. They don't even know what they are. Jim Garish was here. So, he's our number one, forage guy in Stockman Grass Farmer. He said, I've never seen anything like this. I don't even know what these grasses are. And so we're enjoying that seed bank, that latent seed bank that has sat there for centuries. And with our love, with the chainsaw, our ecological massage, our exercise program. I don't know how much I can deadlift, but I can deadlift a chainsaw. I can tell you that. And with the pigs as our partners, we've gone in there and reawakened an environment that spoke to those seeds that have been sitting there for 400 years, 500 years, and said, it's okay to come out now. Talk about wisdom of seeds. That's wisdom, that they have sat there that long waiting to sprout. And so now we have these beautiful, I'd love to take y'all up there, these beautiful I took Sally and up last day, and these beautiful silvopastures. We never planted a seed, and yet they're just full of these beautiful, soft, very palatable grasses that have just come up that were latent in the seed bank. It is truly a magic. Going back to, it's a magic of an expression of when ancient wisdom meets today's massage, and you have this rebirth.
So when I was reading that question, I had no idea you were going to tell that story, and that's terrific. I'm glad we got to that one. It reminds me of a story Phil Robertson told from Duck Dynasty, told about somehow he had this big deforestation from a storm, essentially. But because his reliance on God, a flood the following year brought in a ton of acorns and grew all these trees that were so much more valuable to him, whatever kind of acorn they were, just incredible. So.
We got a bunch of pines and he got oaks.
There you go. Yeah, it was terrific. So thank you for that. And that's all the questions we had. I do want to take my 20 seconds just to tell you how influential you've been in my life. And I just get to see a little bit of people throughout the week, and I get to pass the wisdom that the 4 of you have given to me on to other people, and I'm just one little speck. So I know you've heard this before from 100 people every year, but the influence, the ripple effect you have in this world is so beyond even what you can imagine. And I know you guys have great imaginations. So thank you very much for Joel allowing us to be here, and Hilda just for being you. So yeah.